I'm originally from Denver, Colorado, and I've been living in Israel since 1977, and in this town Tzfat since 1979. And I moved here because when I was a teenager, I got interested in doing art, and this town is famous as a place of many artists. But at the same time, I was like sort of searching for spirituality. This was like the early 1970s, and I was like a hippie and experimenting with psychedelics a little bit, like almost everybody back then. And I was fortunate to meet a rabbi that showed me that we have a very rich spiritual, mystical tradition as part of Judaism, the Kabbalah. And I started studying it then, and I came to Israel to continue my studies. And I try and like integrate my art with some of the things that I've been learning. And at a certain point, because I use a lot of symbols from the Kabbalah in my art, Hebrew letters and numbers, like I'll show you, I found that I could use it to teach. So that's why I set up this little lecture room, and I meet with different groups. And what I do is I take out a few of my pictures, maybe about 10, and I just speak briefly about the ideas that are behind them, and it's like an introduction to Kabbalah, but using art. Okay, if you look at this picture, it's roughly based on a Grateful Dead album cover. And if you've seen those kind of album covers and concert posters, they use lettering in an interesting way. And I do similar things with Hebrew letters. I wrote the verse in Hebrew. I mean, the Israelis will be able to read it right off. It says in Hebrew, Eitz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba, which means it is a tree of life for those who hold fast to it, referring to the Torah. In fact, in the synagogue, when you put the Torah back into the ark, that's the song that's usually sung, Eitz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba. But I'm betting many of you don't see those Hebrew words, am I right? Mm-hmm. You're probably looking for them in the green, but they're in the gray, not the green. Now everybody sees?
Oh yeah.
Look in the gray, the lighter color. I'll help you out. Here's the word Chaim. Here's a chet, and then 2 yods, and a mem sofit, a final mem. Everybody sees it now?
Yes.
See, sometimes we get stuck looking at the world in a certain way. And the Kabbalah and also art helps us sort of free our minds a little bit, get unstuck in how we look at the world. And the Kabbalah is associated with the tree of life. In fact, the symbol here on the trunk of the tree in the blue is also called the tree of life. It's the main symbol of the Kabbalah. Now, why the tree of life? You know the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. There were 2 trees, the tree of knowing good and bad, and the tree of life. And it says there that if Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowing good and bad, they surely die. And that's the tree that they ate from in this story. But if they would have eaten from the tree of life, they would live forever. And the Kabbalah is about fixing that, choosing the tree of life rather than the tree of knowing good and bad. And the Kabbalists say that one of the interesting things about the Kabbalah is that they explain these stories in a metaphorical way, not literal, having to do with something back then, but choices that are given to all of us. And they say that the tree of knowing good and bad is associated with the body, who is limited in the physical world of time and space. But the tree of life refers to the soul, and eating from the tree of life refers to appreciating our soul and making a good connection to the soul. And Kabbalah is really the continuation of prophecy. The Bible was written through prophecy, and prophecy is defined as seeing the world from the perspective of the soul rather than seeing the world from the perspective of just the body. And the world looks very different from that perspective. And that's sort of what the Kabbalah is about, techniques how to get in touch with the soul, and also ideas about how the world looks from the perspective of the soul. So the tree of life associated with the soul. And there's different symbols that are part of the Kabbalah. The Kabbalists used to go out into nature to do their teachings of the mysteries of the Torah. They like to be by a flowing stream. And water goes down, and it represents how the nature of our physical bodies has this gravity that's connected to the earth. And that's a good thing. It's important to be grounded. And it's about appreciating that we have this amazing tool, the body. But the fire represents the soul. That's why often there's a custom to light candles to remember a departed soul, because fire goes up and it represents how the soul doesn't want to be limited by the limitations of the physical and the body, because its nature is eternal. Like it says, eat from the tree of life, you live forever. The soul is eternal, immortal, infinite. And the Kabbalists say that the soul is actually the presence of God. And they say that from the perspective of the soul, a person sees all of life as one. There isn't that separateness that's part of the physical world, that everybody is separate. On the level of the soul, it's like one eternal, infinite soul that pervades all life. So, do you see how the tree is also a menorah? And there's 7 branches of that menorah with 7 flames over those branches. 7 is a number that we use when we talk about the nature of the body in time and space. But you see how there's one big flame that includes them all? That's like the 8th. 8 is a number that we use when we talk about the nature of the soul, the infinite and the eternal. For example, okay. I call this picture the 7 days of creation. Do you see how it's the story of creation according to Genesis? So the 6 days we work with our body. But on the 7th day, on Shabbat, when we rest, we can breathe more deeply. And in Hebrew, the word for soul, neshama, is very closely related to the word for breath, nishima. And that's why in meditative traditions all over the world, awareness of breath is like very important. And breath goes in and out, and connection to the soul. So on Shabbat is a good time to connect to the soul. And where's Shabbat in this picture?
Around the whole thing?
He says around the whole thing. Does everybody agree? In the center. Well, you're both right, because this is a fractal. It's a picture inside a picture inside a picture, like that movie Inception. If like breath goes in and out, if you zoom in, here's a cycle of 6, and then see how the 7th includes them all? And then it has its own center, which includes them all. And like the 7th points to the infinite, but in both directions. Because you could also zoom out, that the whole thing is the center of an even larger cycle, where you're just seeing the bottom of the yellow and the top of the purple. Everybody sees that? Mm-hmm. So by zooming out and zooming in, being aware of all time, but also the importance of, like on Shabbat, by being very present in the present moment, the taste of the eternal is available. And it's sort of like all moments in each moment of time. And that's part of the experience of enlightenment or prophecy, is experiencing all moments of time in each moment of time. So 7 in terms of time, but 8 represents the infinite and the eternal. In fact, if you put the figure 8 on the side, it's the mathematical symbol for
infinity.
Infinity. And we'll have more about the 7 and the 8 as we continue, because 7 also represents space. Okay, infinity in Hebrew is Ein Sof, which means no end or infinite. Is actually one of the names for God that the Kabbalists use, the infinite one. And that's why circles are used a lot in mystical art all over the world, because a circle has no beginning and no end. A mathematician would say a circle has an infinite number of sides. Are there mathematicians here? It's like this, right? A triangle has 3 sides, a rectangle 4, pentagon 5, hexagon 6, and you keep adding sides. And at infinity, you have a circle. Something like that. More or less. But circles, no beginning and no end. What do you say about the circles in this picture? Do they have a beginning and an end or not?
Well, there seems to be a line through them.
So would you describe the circles here as broken, incomplete, all separate, not connected to themselves or to each other?
I think if you think of it as 3D, it kind of looks like it's something emitting from the circle, so your eye kind of can follow the rest of the ring, like as a perspective, different space.
Okay, you could look at it in different ways, but just the colored circles are incomplete and all separate. But see if you can focus your eyes on the white circles.
Oh, yeah.
How would you describe the white circles?
Complete.
Complete and all connected. Right? So it's like, this is like the colored circles represent the nature of the physical, that they're all made of many separate parts. But the nature of the soul is like that unity, the glue that holds all the parts together. And like she pointed out, if you focus on the white circles, you can see this picture as 3D, almost like those magic eyes. Do you see it like that? Okay, do you see it as a tunnel going in, a mountain going out, or can you see both? It's just, I'm just asking you how you see it. And there isn't a right answer or a wrong answer. Some people will see it one way, some people will see it the other way.
Yeah, I kind of see it going in.
Okay. A lot of people will see it in. Kabbalists like to see things both ways, to appreciate both the inside and the outside. Because like breath goes in and out. And a big part of Kabbalah is like looking at things from different perspectives. So there's part of our nature is this separateness, but the nature of the soul is unity. How all of the white is all one piece. But in this symbol called the Tree of Life, the main symbol of the Kabbalah, these 10 colored circles, they come together, represented by the network of lines connecting them to process life. And we process life on many different levels. And the symbol of the Tree of Life is sort of used to help us appreciate all the different spheres of our being, how we process life on different levels.
Also, is it just me, or does it look like this is another picture-in-a-picture one? Like, it looks like the picture repeats itself at the very bottom there.
It does. And then repeats itself again. But what I wrote here on these circles, Keter means crown. And it's above the head. And it represents awareness of the soul that's beyond the mind. And that we can have spiritual experiences. There are techniques to have spiritual experiences that transcend the mind. It's a crown. Chokhmah and Binah, wisdom and understanding, are the two halves of the mind. Just as the brain is divided into two hemispheres, right and left, we can see the big picture and we can see the details, the forest and the trees. And the symmetry is about having a healthy dynamic balance between those two. Now the next 3 circles are on the level of the upper body, and they represent spectrum of emotions. So there's the heart, and then the arms represent emotions that bring close, like love and kindness. And we have emotions that make boundaries and distance. And here too, to be healthy, it's important to be flexible, when to use one, when to use the other. So spiritual dimension, mental dimension, emotional dimension. And then the lower 4 circles, the smallest 4 here is like the lower body, the base. So it's like the 2 legs, and then male and female. And that has to do with reproduction. Because the most basic way that we process life has to do with reproducing ourselves, which is food and sex, genetic reproduction and cellular reproduction and genetic reproduction. So that's why there's a small copy of the whole here. Okay, the idea of reproduction. I call this picture meditating on the holy name. And I made a woman sitting cross-legged. She has her eyes closed and she's looking within. She's practicing ancient meditation where you visualize in your mind the name of God. And I made a woman because when we think about the infinite within, we call that feminine, the divine presence, Shekhinah in Hebrew. And the name of God means eternal, was, is, and will be. So she's looking inside and feeling that really the source of her soul is the soul is the presence of God, and it's eternal. So she's connecting to the tree of life. Now, did you notice that in her meditation, she's also feeling the shape of her body as the shape of those 4 letters? You see how she's feeling her head as that first letter Yud, and her shoulders and arms as the red letter Hey. Her spine is this yellow Vav, and her pelvis and legs is the blue letter Hey. Does everybody see that? Mm-hmm. Did you see it before I pointed it out, or? This is another meditative practice, to feel that the structure of our body is in the image of the name of God. We're all temples for the eternal. When I made this picture, I painted this about 1999, and when I put it up in my gallery, sometimes people would come in here and they would ask me questions like, are those the chakras from the yoga tradition? Mm-hmm. Sometimes people ask me, is that a female Buddha? Could you see why people might see things in those? Every once in a while, somebody will come in and ask me, did you make a picture of Jesus? Is that the crown of thorns? Apropos to today. But I thought that was interesting, that in the same picture, people saw I'm using Jewish Kabbalistic symbols, but people saw Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, something universal.
Do the 10 circles have anything to do with like the 10 Sephirot?
They represent the 10 Sephirot. Okay. That's why I say Sephirot, spheres of our being. A few years ago, I was visited by a Sufi sheikh from Senegal, and Sufism is the mystical tradition of Islam, and they like chanting the names of God, very spiritual. And I showed him how the name of God put vertically is the shape of the body, and then he told me, and I didn't know this, that if you hold this picture horizontally, you can see in Arabic letters the word Allah, the Arabic name for God. And I didn't do that intentionally, but I thought that was very beautiful. Then in the same picture, there's the name of God in Hebrew and Arabic. And like I was saying, I think that when a person is really connected to the soul, it brings them to a universal embrace. And I think that you're on Birthright about Jewish identity. I think that just like when you identify as a Jewish person, it shouldn't diminish your identity as an individual. It should deepen it in a larger context. And the same thing, to be aware of, that we're all part of this global village. It shouldn't diminish our identity as a Jewish person. It should deepen it. So I think that's an important part of Kabbalah and mysticism, is like this universal aspect. Okay, I call this picture the Tree of Life, and you see I sort of fused both symbols into one picture. See how the root system is this symbol that has to do with our nature, like both the broken aspect of the physical realm, incomplete, but the complete and infinite aspect of the spiritual, the soul. That's our nature. And then the flowers here have the symmetry of this symbol, the Tree of Life. Like I was saying, how we choose to grow into the future if we're balanced on the level of body, balanced on the level of heart, balanced on the level of mind, connected to the soul, then we're using all of our being to grow towards the future. And our nature comes from our past, but what we do with it to grow in the future, that's our choice. So the Tree of Life, where we come from, where are we going, and it's also associated with the name of God, was, is, and will be. Now, you see how I have red fire surrounding the flowers with the seeds? And I have blue water surrounding the roots. Like I said at the beginning, they represent these two opposites. The water that flows down, the fire that goes up, the physical, the spiritual, earth and heaven. In the Kabbalah, as many other traditions, we talk about 4 elements. Fire, water, air, and earth. And interesting, in Hebrew, the word for air, avir, is very close to the word for light, or. And that's why I use yellow for the air. And there's 3 primary colors: red, yellow, and blue in paint. So this town Tzfat is very much related to air. In Hebrew, ruach means spirit and breath. And again, breath is the connection to the soul. Nishima is breathing, neshama is soul. And according to the Kabbalah, of the 22 Hebrew letters, it's taught that 3 letters are primary. And you can see them in this picture over here. Do you see in the lighter red, embedded in the triangle, is the letter Shin? Sort of a funny looking shin, but it's a shin. Shin is a primary letter because it represents fire. In Hebrew, fire is ish. So say the word ish and draw out the end of it like this. Ish. Ish. Do you feel how you have to open your lips to make that sound and the air goes out through your teeth? It's a hissing, chaotic sound. Shh. Mem is a primary letter. Do you see how in the lighter blue there's the letter mem? But mem sofit, the final mem, is like a rectangle. So I have it embedded in a rectangle. Everybody sees that? Mem stands for water, in Hebrew mayim. Now do the same thing with the word mayim. Mayim. Do you feel feel how it's the opposite? You have to keep your lips closed. And it resonates inward, it's harmonic. These are sounds that are used in meditation all over the world. We call them primary sounds. Aleph is the third primary letter, the first Hebrew letter, and it stands for air, avir, or light, or. And that's why I use yellow for it, like I said. Everybody sees it? And look at the shape of the letter Aleph. Like atoms that are made up of smaller parts, Hebrew letters are made up of smaller Hebrew letters. And you see how this is made up of 2 yuds and a vav? So it represents a breath of air. The muscle that we use to breathe, the diaphragm, it divides our body in half at a diagonal. And it goes up and down as we breathe out and in. So it's like a breath of air, out and in. But the 2 halves of breath are equally important. In fact, I was talking about the tree of life. We need trees to live. Because what we breathe in, trees breathe out. And what trees breathe in, we breathe out. So both are equally important. And I like to make it in a circle because, again, a circle is no beginning and no end. But you know the symbol for no parking or no entrance or no smoking or... Aleph is not 2, right? The in and the out are both. So it's like the synthesis of the other 2. Sh is out, in, but breath is both in and out. Is everybody following me? When I learned about this idea of 3 primary Hebrew letters, the primary elements, as an artist, I first connected them to the primary colors, like I told you. But then I noticed that if you look in a Torah scroll, the shin has to come to a point on the bottom. And it reminded me of a triangle. And I started embedding the shin in a triangle. And a mem sofit, a final mem, is like a rectangle. And I told you I like to make the aleph as a circle. So these letters are primary elements: fire, air, water. Primary sounds, primary colors. I thought, why not primary shapes? And even though I didn't see it in any of the books, one day I thought maybe through gematria I'll discover the geometry of these letters. Are you familiar with gematria? Gematria is how the Hebrew letters are numbers, or you can also do it with any letters, but it's used a lot in Kabbalah. So here's the chart of gematria, and sometimes by reducing things to numbers, you can get more insight into it. I'll give you an example. The aleph, which is 2 yuds and a vav. Let's do the number of that. Well, 2 yuds is 20, vav is 6, and if you reduce that to a single digit, 2 and 6 equals 8, which is infinite. Right? Like I was saying about the breath. So, Shin is the 21st Hebrew letter, or it's associated with 300. Either way, reduced to a single digit, because we're dealing with primary things, becomes 3. 2 and 1 is 3, or 3 plus 0 is still 3. And a triangle has 3 sides. Mem is 13 or 40. Either way, 4, rectangle, has 4 sides. Aleph is 1, but how many sides does a circle have?
None.
Well, it's interesting, because sometimes people say a circle has no sides, Some will say it has one continuous side. Mathematicians say infinite without beginning and end. And every once in a while I hear a fourth answer. How many sides does a circle have? 2.
Inside and out.
Inside and out. But the 2 halves of breath is inside and out. So when I made that connection to the primary shapes through geometry, I realized something else. 3 and 4 together make 7. And remember I showed you the picture with the 7 days of creation? And how 7 represents time. 7 also represents space. And I tried to show that here. A 3-dimensional space is up and down, right and left, front and back. And then the center is the 7th where they meet. Does this look 3D to you? Okay, look at the center point. Do you see it as going in, out, or can you see it both ways? Again. It's possible to see it both ways. You have to sort of be flexible how you look at things, but that's how Kabbalists like to look at things. It's more interesting. Does everybody see the Star of David as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Star of David is a 6-pointed star with the center as the 7th. But I also showed how colors have to do with 7 as well. White light is made up of the 7 colors of a spectrum with physical paint, 3 primary colors, and then if you blend them, yellow and blue make green, the complement of red. Blue and red make purple, the complement of yellow. Red and yellow make orange, the complement of blue. But if you blend all 3 primaries together, yellow, blue, and red makes brown, representing earth, receiving from the other 3. You see how it's like a peace symbol? So 7 is time and space. Our bodies are limited in time and space. But like I showed you before, 8 represents the infinite, the nature of our soul. And because by adding the 1 to the 3 and the 4 is how we get 8, I hinted at the letter Aleph here with the colors. Everybody sees them? I call this picture the infinite Aleph. See the 2 Yuds and the Vav? But you could also see the figure 8. And I call this the infinite 8. But do you also see the Aleph here? The diagonal yellow and then the up and... Okay, these are the last pictures I'll show you. But there's 2 more aspects of this that I think you'll like of this discovery. Besides being the symbol for infinity, this is also a Mobius loop. And a Mobius loop is an interesting mathematical shape. If you take a strip of paper, I like using canvas because it has a lighter and darker side too. Now if I would make a ring out of it, well, there's still 2 sides, a darker outside, lighter inside, and 2 edges, one away from you, one close to you. Everybody sees that? But the Mobius loop, if you twist it and then connect it, this shape is no longer 2. It's only 1. One side, one edge. And modern science has also shown us that many things that we used to think of as 2 are not 2. Time and space, not 2. Matter and energy, not 2. What about multiplication and division? Well, we divide by multiplying and multiply by dividing. In fact, doesn't this remind you a little bit of the symbol for multiplication and division? So if you take something and you divide it in half, usually you end up with 2 pieces, because dividing is also multiplying. But this shape is so not 2 that even divided all the way in half, it stays one.
Oh wow.
And I like that as a symbol for the breath in the soul. That if the soul is the infinite presence of God, then it could be divided among the many bodies and still remain one and infinite. So I like that. And the last thing I'll share with you, and this happened again by accident, well maybe not. In this ancient text called the Book of Creation, Sefer Yetzirah, a tribute to Abraham, that's the source of how these are the three primary letters. And it says there that they're in this order. The Shin above, it's like the fire that goes up, the Mem below, the water that flows down, Aleph is the air in between. I paint them in that order. But when I translated them to the primary shapes using gematria geometry, I said, oh my gosh, here's another connection to geometry. Remember in geometry, the relationship between the circumference of a circle and its diameter is an interesting number, pi. And pi looks very much like the Hebrew letter chet, which is the 8th Hebrew letter. And pi is irrational, it goes to infinity. But what are the first three numbers of pi?
3.14.
3.14. And the Shin is associated with 3, the triangle. The Aleph is the 1. The Mem is the 4, the rectangle. 3, 1, 4. Added together, it equals 8, which is also the symbol for infinity. Wow. So that's my presentation, a little intro to Kabbalah using my art. Okay, do you have any questions or?
Are these like original, or like do you use prints and then just like make them over? You don't like make a different one every time, right? Because you have some of the same ones.
Right, they're prints.
Right.
I make different kinds of prints. I have like better quality prints on canvas that are a bit more expensive, and then I also have like posters that are cheaper.
Are any of these works for sale?
Yes, there are. I have lots of things for sale, and no pressure. But you have, if anybody's interested, that is how I make my living, and we pack everything for you so you can get it home safely. I have like posters here for 25 shekels on this, and we make envelopes with 2 pieces of cardboard to get them home safely. I have like larger posters, and the better prints I roll in tubes, magnets, whatever. And there's a restroom down here. There's also upstairs. If anybody needs, you're welcome to use our restroom. Our gallery is attached to our house, but you can use our restrooms. It's fine. And I also have a website. And there's business cards there that you can take. But are there any more questions before we break?
This is a bit strange, I guess, but is there a sense of different levels of infinity in Kabbalah?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's like sort of related to like Cantor.
Well, this is why I'm asking, because in mathematics you have multiple levels of infinity, and
Represented by the letter Aleph.
yeah, that's true. That's true. And space is considered a larger, a continuous infinity, whereas words and numbers, not words and numbers, but like things you can count and anything you can write is considered a smaller infinity.
Yeah. And today, I think many of the breakthroughs of modern science was dealing with infinity. Because at first, infinity threw everything out of whack, and then first through calculus, they were able to. I'm not a mathematician, but I like to read about like the history of science and stuff, and I think it's fascinating, like the parallels between like, you know, mystical thinking and science. Any other questions?
Can you buy prints off the website and have them mailed to the States?
Yes, you can.
Awesome.
You could also buy them here and we'll mail them to you. Either way. It's really nice talking to you. Have a wonderful time here in Israel. It's an amazing country. I'm sure you'll have
Thank you.
an awesome time.